Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, committee members, I want to start with a brief overview of the UNLV School of Medicine. We began a process in 2014 to become a School of Medicine under our founding dean, Dr. Barbara Atkinson. We had our first class enrolled in 2017, and we anticipate our first match and graduation this spring. From a mission strategy perspective, we're here at the School of Medicine to care for our community. We do that through patient care, research, education, and community engagement. And running through each of those four pillars, if you will, are people, planning, and process, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's really how we decide what we're going to do and how we're going to use valuable resources. We've treated more than 52,000 patients, performed over 50,000 surgeries, and delivered more than 5,000 babies in our 3-year or so lifespan. I'm going to talk about COVID at the end, but I want to mention that we're actively involved in stem cell research for patients with cardiovascular illness, motor vehicle accident research, and personalized medicine. As part of our school's mission, all of our students are involved in community service. We have set up a free clinic with the Southern Nevada Health District, and we're in the process of setting up a school clinic to provide care to our most vulnerable populations. We also have a new 130,000 square foot medical education building due to open sometime late summer, early fall of 2022. We started several initiatives, including combined MD MBA, MD MPH, and MD PhD programs. We are about to open an early accept program with our honors college. We have expanded graduate medical education, and we're working to try to help diversify the economy in Southern Nevada through a technology commercialization program. Now let me spend a minute or two talking about COVID-19. I started as the brand new dean at the School of Medicine April 1st in the thick of the COVID pandemic. One of the things, I'm a hematologist by training, so one of the things that we wanted to set up when I got here was a convalescent plasma program where we take plasma, the liquid part of blood, from patients who have recovered from COVID and give them to some of our sick patients suffering COVID infections. We were the first in the state to do that. We were the first to launch that, and we've had a successful program really since mid-April 2020. To date, we've tested over 250,000 patients for COVID, and we're the first to set up curbside testing regardless of one's ability to pay. As of today, we've vaccinated over 32,000 people, focusing mostly on frontline workers, healthcare providers, police, fire. We've also in the middle of vaccinating the Clark County School District, and we will expand to others per the governor's guidelines. Our students have been on the front line. They've been answering phones. They've been assisting with our convalescent plasma program early on. They've been answering questions. Our students during their first 2 years of school are in a hybrid curriculum, both in person as well as virtual. And our clinical students are in the hospitals taking care of patients. Similarly, our faculty have been actively involved in the care of COVID patients. The mortality of COVID patients in our primary teaching hospital, UMC, is below the national average. And that's really a testament not only to the doctors, but also to the nurses, respiratory therapists, pharmacists, and everyone else who works so hard on the front lines at UMC. Similarly, our residents have been actively involved in taking care of COVID patients. That is a brief overview of our school. Mr. Chairman, I am open for questions.
Okay, do we have questions? Senator Rondeau-Loop.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you so much for this information. I see your successes here. Can you just give us a very brief overview where you see the next, say, 6 months going?
Thank you, Madam Senator and Mr. Chairman. I think that, our biggest struggle, as with other state entities, deal with state finance. We're running lean and mean. We're very much a startup organization, and we would like to grow, but have been somewhat limited by the current fiscal crisis. We are hopeful moving forward that some resources will be freed up so we can continue to develop programs and grow. Secondly, we had our final visit for full accreditation. It was a virtual visit in October. The national committee that fully accredits medical schools is meeting this week, and we should hear soon about accreditation, but certainly that is on our radar. Moving forward, we look forward to moving into our new medical education building. We look forward to expanding clinical services. We look forward to caring for our community, including the most vulnerable. But again, I think our biggest threat, is that of the current fiscal crisis.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that information. Thank you.
Quick question for you. I noticed as you talk about the new initiatives, one is a community-based clinics. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are those clinics that will be done throughout the community or in a centralized place?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came from an institution that had over 30 clinics in the community, staffed by faculty and students. And when I came to UNLV, one of our goals was to set up similar clinics. So in partnership with the other health science schools at UNLV, including the schools of nursing, dental medicine, integrative health, and public health, we've partnered with the Southern Nevada Health District to set up a community clinic that will see patients regardless of ability to pay. That clinic would have been open early fall, but COVID has delayed implementation. The thing I like about this clinic is A, it's in the community, B, it's interdisciplinary with all the health schools and their students participating, and C, it really speaks to our central mission to care for our community. In addition, we're working with some of the schools to try to set up neighborhood clinics in schools after hours. Those discussions are underway, but the planning is less advanced than that for the community clinic.
So where will it be located?
It will be located at the Southern Nevada Health District.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Senator Donate.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, and hello, Dr. Khan, Dean Khan. Quick side note, really quick comment. Last time I was in Carson City was a few years ago, and it was to lobby for the establishment of the UNLV School of Medicine. So it's really cool just to be able to see the transition and everything that has happened since then. The last time I came here was when I was a student at UNLV. My main question for you today is I'm actually interested in hearing about what you guys are doing in your tech commercialization. I know you mentioned that in your presentation. What does the future of innovation in healthcare look like for the UNLV School of Medicine? And is there certain things that you guys are you guys barely in the early stages of planning, or what does that look for you?
Well, thank you, Senator, and I'd like to thank you for your support early on for our school. We certainly do appreciate that. So when I think about the economy of Southern Nevada, it didn't take anything more than COVID to make us recognize that we really need a more diverse economy. And I think a strong School of Medicine and academic health center can go a long way towards helping to diversify our economy. As you probably know, at Blackfire, the Harry Reid Research Park, there's space set up for new technologies. Predominantly, those new technologies have focused on gaming, but we started discussions to talk about how we can expand into healthcare. One of the things that we do need in Southern Nevada is wet lab space so we can have incubators for new biotechnologies. And we've talked about what that might look like and where they might be located. From an educational perspective, we've been working together with the schools of engineering and the schools of science and the other health science schools to talk about what technology commercialization would look like at UNLV, what we already have, because we already have an engineering school that's actively involved in technology commercialization, but we'd like to involve also the health science schools and the business schools, et cetera. Where I came from, we had set up a speed dating event where medical students with ideas were paired with engineers who know how to make turn ideas into a reality, and business students who could help finance organizations to set up teams to help develop technology. We're at the starting stages to begin planning for similar processes, again, with the other schools at UNLV. So technology commercialization is a long-term process. It's going to take planning, et cetera. And I'm happy that the School of Medicine is going to be a prime player in that arena.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Senator? Okay. Anybody else? I'm not seeing anyone else. If you are, get on the mic. Okay. Thank you very much. So that's the end of your presentation. Is that correct, Dr. Khan?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Great. So thank you very much for your presentation, and glad to see all the great work that's going on. And I know come a long way in a short time. So thank you for all the work that you're doing there.
Appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will now go to an overview of the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine and COVID-19 response efforts. We have Dr. Thomas Schwenk, Dean of the School of Medicine and Vice President of Health Sciences for UNR. Dr. Schwenk.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. Thank you, members of the Senate Committee on Education. Good afternoon to all of you, and happy President's Day. Tom Schwenk, Dean of the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine. I thank you for the opportunity to brief you on the School of Medicine. There is nothing that medical school deans like to do more than talk about their medical schools or to hear about each other's schools. So I enjoyed Dr. Khan's presentation very much. I appreciate the opportunity in particular to tell you about our outstanding faculty and staff members and students and the many ways that they serve the state. What I would like to do is to break this already brief presentation into three parts. First, an overview of our school with some numbers and some quantitative measures that will help you understand what we do and how we serve. And then second, several success stories that will give you a more personal view of the school, and that'll focus a bit more on the COVID pandemic response. And then finally, a glimpse of the future, in particular, a focus on our negotiations with Renown Health and our hope to create a destination integrated health system. So first, some numbers. You have, I think, distributed to you or should be available at some point, our 2020-2021 fact sheet. We do this every year to sort of summarize the previous year and kind of gives a chance to bring many interested parties and stakeholders up to date with a detailed summary of many of our programs. So I thought I would just give you a couple highlights off of that. As many of you know, 2 years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary of our founding in 1969. And since 1969, or actually more accurately, since our first class of four-year students who graduated in 1981, we have educated nearly 2,100 physicians, medical students becoming physicians, who have contributed to improved health across the state and across the country. If you add to that the residents and fellows for whom we have been responsible for their training, and that, of course, includes a large number over many years in Las Vegas, and now a smaller number, but continued several programs in Reno. We have trained nearly 4,000 physicians, and about a third of those practice in Nevada. We have held full accreditation by the Liaison Committee on Medical Education, the LCME, since our formation, and now hold that full accreditation through our next site visit in 2026. We have worked very hard to develop a sophisticated approach to pipeline development for our medical school admissions process, and we're reaching down to middle schools and high schools to identify the best students for eventual admission to medical school. And they feed into a very sophisticated, very robust, holistic process for selecting the best of the best, both brightest academically as well as the best professionally and personally. Last year, we had over 1,600 applicants to medical school for our class of 70. Our class is typically composed of over 90% Nevada students, and the rest are from neighboring Western states who have some sort of Nevada connection. Our pipeline programs have led to significant success in enrolling students from our mission-based diversity groups, including first generation and rural students. The reason that I have picked that particular issue of pipeline programs and medical school admissions is because I resonate with Dr. Khan's comments about how much we are strained and stressed by the state budget reductions, because those are some of the core funds that support those type of pipeline programs and are particularly precious when we want to be even more successful in diversifying our medical school class. As you know, we launched our physician assistant training program in 2018. We graduated our first class last year, 24 physician assistants, 85% of whom are Nevada residents, and almost all of them staying in Nevada to practice. Project ECHO is our telehealth program, which provides subspecialty consultation to healthcare clinicians, so physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants who are practicing in both rural and urban underserved communities throughout Nevada. The program enhances the skills and knowledge of these clinicians through consultation and education from our consultants. So this is not telemedicine where we care for patients directly, but we teach and consult with practitioners in underserved areas so as to keep their patients in their home communities for complex healthcare, as well as enhance the skills of the local practitioners. Since 2012, Project ECHO has delivered over 900 programs to more than 12,000 participants from across Nevada. In 2020 alone, they had 5,000 participants with programs mostly devoted to COVID-19 pandemic. As part of our commitment to improving the health and well-being of all Nevadans and their communities, we opened a family medicine residency training program in Elko in partnership with Nevada Health Centers in 2019. And that program has expanded markedly the ability of Medicare patients in particular, as well as others in the community, to receive primary care. During the COVID-19 surge in Elko, our family medicine as well as internal medicine residents who do some training there shifted a lot of their work into the hospital so as to help Elko physicians care for those patients. Since 1996, UNR Med medical students have run the Student Outreach Clinic, what we call the SOC, and that is staffed and covered by volunteer attending physicians from both the community and our full-time faculty. And that clinic provides free medical care to about 1,000 patients a year who are uninsured or underinsured in Northern Nevada. We are proud to have some of the most highly funded basic scientists in the country. For a very small school, we have some extraordinary scientists who compete with the very best scientists around the country. Some of our basic science departments rank in the top 30 or 40 departments of their peers and ahead of departments in much larger medical schools. Our basic science investigators have secured about $250 million in external funding over the past 10 years. And I note that because I want to also emphasize the widely accepted fact that every dollar of external funding requires about 50 cents of institutional support for facilities and personnel that the grant does not cover. Research does not, quote, make money, although it does markedly enhance the school and the state's prestige, and also has significant spinoffs in biotech, and improve clinical care in other areas. But I just emphasize that state funding to medical schools is a critical investment to support some of that external grant support. But I also think that there's a substantial return on investment from those funds. Our investigators have particular expertise in several important diseases and disorders, including muscular dystrophy, diabetes, gastrointestinal diseases, Parkinson's disease, cardiovascular disease, hearing disorders and deafness, brain biology and neuropsychiatric consequences of stress, immune system dysfunction, several infectious diseases, and COVID as well. And there are some biotech spinoffs of some of those projects and investigators, if you're interested in hearing about those. One measure of our research excellence is the recognition last year of Dr. Kent Standers, who was our chair of physiology and cell biology. He was recognized as Nevada's 2020 Distinguished Researcher, which is an annual award presented to just one scientist chosen from the entire higher ed system. Let me shift now to just a couple of the many dozen success stories and points of pride that I could offer to you, with, again, a particular focus on the pandemic. And much of this focuses on the Nevada State Public Health Laboratory, which has been one of the many heroes of managing the COVID pandemic in Nevada, and literally a hero as proclaimed by Governor Sisolak. The governor also tapped the public health lab director, Dr. Mark Pandori, as the state's chief of testing to supervise the COVID-19 testing system in Nevada. Early on, Nevada gained approval from the FDA to become one of just 3 states allowed to develop, evaluate, and conduct COVID-19 testing on its own. And this gave Nevada the chance to get out in front of testing as much as was possible at the time in those early days, and to provide testing in particular for healthcare providers. The Nevada laboratory also became the first public health lab in the nation to create its own COVID-19 sample collection kits that were approved. These achievements, along with many others involving equipment, expert personnel, 24/7 testing schedules, led to Nevada being one of the leaders in the early days of COVID testing. And I will note that these successes continue even in the face of some of the stress of furloughs. UNR-Med research scientists are working with the State Public Health Lab and private partners to conduct COVID-19 research in genomic sequencing, antibody testing, and testing supply manufacturing. And as part of that, the Nevada State Lab documented in a rigorous fashion the first known case of coronavirus reinfection in the U.S. in last August. The issue of reinfection has become an increasingly prominent issue in the face of coronavirus variants. And the Public Health Lab detected Nevada's first known case of the B117 or UK variant. Moving on, the Sanford Center for Aging, the team at UNR-Med was concerned about how the pandemic was wearing on Nevada's older adults. And the response was to stand up the Nevada COVID-19 Aging Network Response Plan, called Nevada CAN, C-A-N, and it was developed to provide statewide coordination of aging services. The project has led to thousands of older Nevadans receiving various pandemic services in collaboration with the state agencies, who have been wonderful to work with and to collaborate with Sanford. Our medical and physician assistant students have also been heroes in their COVID-19 response. More than 100 students contributed over 5,000 volunteer hours in support of Nevada's healthcare workers in particular, from staffing testing, telephone triage, and vaccine services to providing child and elder care for stressed healthcare workers in both Elko and, of course, in the Reno Sparks communities. And finally, our faculty physicians and residents have been on the front lines of the pandemic for now a year, with expanded hospital coverage, a wide range of virtual telephone, parking lot, and other creative adaptations to remaining available for routine patient care needs at the same time that they cared for COVID patients, both in the hospital and in the office. So now let me finish, Chair Dennis, talk a bit about the future. Nearly a year ago, we were approached by renowned health leaders to consider a high-level integration of many of our clinical services, clinical teaching, and clinical research programs. Dozens of meetings later, we took a letter of intent to the Board of Regents, which was unanimously approved in September of 2020. Now, thousands of person hours of work after that, we are preparing a high-level update to the Board of Regents for their March meeting, in which I will lay out the many details and features of a near final affiliation agreement, and we hope to seek endorsement of that very soon thereafter. The intent to affiliate is not about a merger or an assimilation of one partner by the other. It's really critical that UNR Med remain a state-funded, accredited public medical school governed by NSHE, so as to assure that it serves the state, as well as to keep tuition as low as possible and remain accessible to Nevada students. We are not becoming a private medical school. That would be counter to our land grant mission and make us unaffordable to many future students. What we are doing, however, is to create a destination health system unlike anything we've ever discussed with any partner in the past or has been seen anywhere in Nevada to this point. The potential affiliation is our best opportunity to expand the training of primary care and specialty physicians, to possibly expand the size of our medical school class, to expand our clinical research experiences for our students and residents, as well as to influence the delivery of state-of-the-art care in a number of high-end areas, including a cancer center, cardiovascular center, a neuroscience center. We also want to provide a strong clinical foundation for all of our clinical and academic programs. So this influences actually our PA program, our speech pathology program, the Orvis School of Nursing at UNR, and other potential healthcare professional training programs. So there's a very wide range of very powerful transformative effects here. The result of all this, we think, will enhance Nevada's medical education system, expand clinical research capacity, and create a world-class integrated health system that improves access to patient care for all Nevadans and contributes to our vision of a healthy Nevada. So to conclude, Mr. Chair, I will simply say that I am extraordinarily proud of our School of Medicine. I'm particularly proud of how the school and the faculty and staff members and students have stood up over the past year to address a host of extremely challenging situations and have responded in extraordinary ways. And I hope that you and the committee and the state are proud of the school as well. To now have two medical schools, essentially doubling the state's training and research capacity, is a huge step forward to raising the level of health and healthcare in Nevada. And with that, Mr. Chair, I am open for questions.
Yep. Who has some questions? We appreciate the thorough presentation.
Thanks,
I don't
Senator.
see any. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Who was that?
I think Senator Lang has a question.
Oh, Senator Lang, do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead. I didn't see. I was looking for your hand. I thought maybe you might, but I didn't see it. So
it's working now.
We can hear you.
I want to thank you for this presentation. Our daughter is a graduate from the nursing school and is a labor and delivery nurse at Renown. So we really appreciate the good work that happens at UNR. I had a Zoom problem and I missed most of UNLV's presentation, so I would like to ask this question to you. I am wondering if you're doing any work on infectious disease or not infectious diseases in rare diseases. And I know that we have so many of them and people are going out of state to get care because there isn't state care in our state. I'm just wondering if that's something you see in your future for people in Nevada.
Fabulous question, Senator. Thank you for that. It speaks directly to the last part of my presentation, and it has to do with the fact that there are a couple big missing pieces in our healthcare system, certainly in Northern Nevada and perhaps throughout the state, and that is the really high-end subspecialty disease care programs, the cancer center, the cardiovascular center, the neuroscience center. some of the programs that require the recruitment of physician scientists, that require the establishment of clinical research to connect to our basic science research and to begin to really up the level of care and to keep more patients in the state. We have been very proud of our basic science research for all of these years, as I said, and now I think it's time to leverage that to begin to move from what we call from bench to bedside, meaning from the laboratory into the patient care setting, and to really to begin to deliver the kind of care that you are talking about. We have a lot of the basic science platform. We do not yet have the clinical platform, at least in Northern Nevada, and that's what a lot of this discussion with Renown is about, to really begin to become the academic medical center to which people turn when they have those more serious or more unusual diseases, and not to outsource to other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think so often people feel helpless because they go to their doctor and their doctor, I've never seen this before. I don't know what to do. And then you go somewhere else that's out of state and not feeling like you can have the connection that you might with your doctor in your state that you could get to whenever you needed to. So I look forward to that, and I hope it happens soon.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize your comments are so important because there is a tremendous outmigration of a fair bit of care, and we have to really elevate the level of care. I deal with this all the time with patients, as you described, who are just feeling lost, and they can receive excellent care elsewhere, but of course that takes them out of their community, away from their family, away from their support systems. Very stressful, very difficult. We've experienced this with members of the school, and it's been extremely stressful. And I just hope we can contribute to that. But I will also say that it goes back to the issue of investment, that this is why we're partnering with Renown. It's why we have to remain a public school supported in part by the state, because it takes a lot of investment to stand up those programs, to have the physician scientists and the subspecialty physicians who can work with our scientists to develop the research that supports those programs.
I agree, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I as well.
Other questions? Let me make sure. Hold on. Let me check. I got a couple places I have to check. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else raising their hand. I do have a question. Senator Lang, because you did have some issues at the beginning, did you have questions for the first presentation that you didn't get a chance to ask? Looks like Dr. Khan is still here. If you do have a question, we might be able to get him on.
So I would just be interested in the same question I asked our other doctor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your whole name doesn't show. So if he could answer that, that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Khan, go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Mark Khan, Dean and Vice President, UNLV School of Medicine. So, as my colleague, Dr. Schwenk, pointed out, one of the things that's missing in the state of Nevada is a cadre of subspecialists to identify and treat some of those less common diseases that you mentioned. Dr. Schwenk told you what his school is doing, and in the South, what we're doing is partnering with our local hospitals and healthcare systems to try to expand the training opportunities for people interested in some of those residencies. For example, the state does not have a urology residency, yet we're a state of older Americans, half of which are men. We don't have an oncology training program, and the list really goes on. So I think working with Dr. Schwenk, he and I have a lot of work to do together, but I think both of our mutual goal is to have, the major specialties certainly represented in training programs throughout the state. What that will mean is that then we'll be able to train some of our own physicians in those areas, as well as be able to recruit physicians who want to work with residents to our state to really improve that type of care for all of our residents.
Great. Thank
you.
Yes,
and And, oh, excuse me, sorry, Chair. I'm
Go ahead.
particularly interested in rare kidney diseases because it seems to be, I mean, we haven't mentioned that at all, but I think it's maybe a growing number of people as I'm out talking to people that experience this.
Again, nephrology is another area that we don't have a training program in the state, and that's certainly something that we would like to grow.
Thank you. Senator Donate.
Thank you. So, really quick question, and this kind of pertains to everything that's happening right now regarding COVID-19. This is for Dr. Connor, Dr. Schwenk. Internally within your schools, have you considered changing the curriculum to adapt to the training that's needed for telemedicine? Is this something that you have approached to perhaps teaching your students on how to engage with diverse communities through non-traditional means? Because as we know, because of COVID-19, everything has started to pivot, things being done remotely. So I'm wondering, is this a conversation that you've had within your own unit, or what does the future of telemedicine look like in your curriculum?
Mark, shall I go first or you?
Take it, Tom. I'll follow.
So let me back up to the Student Outreach Clinic. That's probably the best answer to your question, Senator. This is a very large clinic. It's been in place now for 25 years, and it serves a very unserved or underserved population. There are no financial transactions whatsoever. And that clinic has become so central to the care of underserved patients that when the pandemic hit, we actually did suspend it for a short time until we could get a handle on the infectious disease issues. But then we reopened virtually. And so our students, a substantial portion of all students go through this clinic and provide services in various ways. And our students actually had a real-time naturalistic experience in how to pivot and respond to this need of patients who could not access us in person. Our geriatric clinic did the same thing, also another population that has difficulty with access. And we created a whole set of virtual services. Interestingly, one of those actually is to have the patient come into the clinic, but then be taken immediately to a sterile room where they are helped to get online with a computer, and their geriatrician is actually next door or nearly next door. And the virtual visit actually takes place within the clinic just because they could not access this at home, but it's much safer. At least in the early days, it was much safer that way to provide those kinds of services. So those are two places where our students and residents are training in this area. I also think our ELCO program and our rural preceptorship, all students are required to serve a month rotation in a rural community. And I think that they learn a ton about how to access patient populations that have difficulty with that access. So I think we are good at that, but I think we've gotten better during the pandemic.
Yeah, I would just like to follow with what Dr. Schwenk said. You know, one of the, I'm sort of an optimist. I look for silver linings, and one of the silver linings of the pandemic is we've all gotten more comfortable with telehealth. And, you know, that's really critical in a rural state like the one that we're in. When I interviewed here a little over a year ago, I asked people about rural health and how prescient that was, because now that's become, telehealth has really become very important. You know, one notion is how do we expand telehealth into the community? And one idea might be to use our neighborhood drugstores that are in at-risk communities. They're already wired. They already have the bricks and mortar. And I don't think it takes much imagination to see how those could really be used as fully functional telehealth clinics, so we can reach some of our most vulnerable citizens. But to follow with what Dr. Schwenk said, yes, telehealth is part of our curriculum. It's going to be a bigger part of our curriculum, and it's really a skill set that the doctor of the future needs to know.
Thank you. Other questions? Looking to see if there's any in the chat. Okay, if I missed you, speak up. Otherwise, thank you very much for the presentations. It's always good to see the good things that are going on in our state. It really does make a difference having access to medical schools in the state, which helps make health better for Nevadans. So thank you. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll go on to our next item, which actually we don't have any BDR introductions at this point. We're going to go on to public comment. I do want to make one comment before I do that, just to acknowledge, I think I acknowledged this earlier. Today is Red for Ed Day here at the legislature, and celebrating education and talking about things that we can do to make education better for all of our students here in Nevada. And so we appreciate those that have made the effort to participate in that today. There's a lot of good things that we're going to be talking about education this session, and so we appreciate all the folks that are keeping an eye and ear on what we're doing and helping us as we try to craft the things that we need for our state to make it better for our kids. So with that, let's go on to public comment. So if we could have our staff.
Thank you,
going.
Chair. The public line. Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
Okay, because there's a little bit of a delay, why don't we give it maybe a minute or so? Keep an eye on it just in case. So we'll be kind of at a pause here for about a minute or so until we see if there's anybody that would like to give public comment.
Chair, the public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So are there any comments from the members before we adjourn? Not hearing any, looking, I'm not seeing any, and I don't see any in the chat. Okay, well, our next meeting will be this Wednesday, and that's all the business that we have for today. That concludes our meeting for today. Thank you.